the more up north. It's so much fun. You know, you should come down here on Thursday nights to Bernie's Bungalow Upstairs Lounge, and you can be part of the audience, and you'll get to write one of these fancy little questions for our panel. Are you guys ready? Will you be my phone-a-friend? Come on, Larry.
Absolutely.
All right. All right, here's our questions from the audience, which is one of my favorite parts. Are there any Native corporations that have a majority of non-Native shareholders? I don't know. You don't think so?
No, I don't believe so.
No.
No, not when you talk about the parent companies. And the subsidiaries, it may be possible.
Okay. Native corporations do not have to publicly disclose their financial information. Should this change? If so, when? Can you answer that one for us?
Well, I probably can, because I was at the forefront of moving a case for full disclosure of all the Native corporations while I was on the board of the Aleut Corporation. And it actually went up to the state Supreme Court, and we had prevailed in that case where corporations were, they didn't have to follow all the SEC standards. And because of that case, they had to, but they still haven't required the kind of disclosure I think that regular corporations in the United States have to. They are required to publish their financial reports to the shareholders, but they're not traded in, you know, the stock exchange, so that they keep it to themselves.
Do you think that would be better for them if they did? Do you think it would be easier?
No, I don't think so. You know, I think it's very important that we maintain transparency in any organization. You know, most people who are shareholders, they buy a share in a corporation. They sign a piece of paper. They choose to join. Many of the people who are ANCSA shareholders, you know, we're not given that choice. Would you prefer a open organization or a closed organization? And I think in the principle of fairness and in the principle of transparency, we need to ensure that, you know, these corporations maintain open books for all their shareholders. Why should it be a mystery? There's nobody who's going to benefit from that.
Right. I think it would also help alleviate some of the.
Well, every shareholder gets their financial reports, but the problem is most of us are not schooled in reading financial reports, so you don't, you know, the information.
As long as you get a check, who cares what the report says?
I disagree with that.
No, I'm just saying that that's what you look at first if it's coming in, and
no,
if
I
the
don't
rest
think
of it's.
so. I think most of the shareholders, the Native shareholders, want to know what's going on.
So maybe have that online. Brad, I think this is for you. It says, I'm interested in hearing more about the social issue of the generation gap between the pre-71 corporate shareholders and the young tribal members today.
Well, I think that this issue is really important. Many of the young people are you know, we have a living history. We have living memories of freedom and being able to choose and shape our own future. And the elders, why they are shareholders, they're realizing very quickly that the essence of freedom and our sovereignty is in jeopardy. And now the youth, and especially, I don't want to misquote a statistic, especially in this forum, but I do, the vast majority of the indigenous population in Alaska is youth now, under 24 years old. And I think that this is very important because they're not shareholders. And these generational gaps we're attempting to break them down, but they are very real, they exist. And you know, to see how they've affected the society, we look at Alaska and I say Alaska is the richest state and the richest country in the world, but we have the highest rates of alcoholism, we have the highest rates of suicide, and we have some of the poorest education statistics in all the nation. And I think that is a part of this separation, this generational gap. And people assume that these ANCSA corporations were set up for the well-being and for the good of the people in rural Alaska, but that's not necessarily true. And so these corporations as a vehicle do not have the tools required to improve the community, and especially with us, you know, hiding their financial statements and nobody truly sure of their legal status and where these corporations exist and the boundaries, we enter a situation where the youth has no option to begin interacting with these corporations. So as our young people are becoming more educated and understanding the Western culture better, they find that they have no tool to go in and engage their ANCSA corporations.
Interesting. Is success defined by being part of the Blackwater Halliburton Club?
Yeah, I think that all corporations in the entire United States, the way they define success is destroying our planet. We need to develop new measures of what success really means. And I think that it means not hoarding, not contributing to scarcity in the world, not destroying the environment, doing something that gives back to what they take. That's the traditional way of looking at success. The corporate standard.
It seems interesting that a group of people that were basically no footprint, leaving, not taking more than there was and giving back whatever they needed. The tradition of Alaska Native peoples, I mean, we can see this over thousands of years. I mean, there's proof of this. That to corporatize them and then to now become part of the war machine through the corporations is so counterintuitive to what was precious and really something that Western world could have learned from them.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think the Western world still can learn. But what we need is, an assessment of what have we wrought to this point, and is it where we want to go? And if it's not, what do we do about it? And it has to be done in deliberative forums in all the communities, with all the tribes, with all the non-shareholders that were born after '71. Everybody's got to engage in that conversation. We've got to develop a process to do that, and we've got to create a new vision for our future.
Thank you. Okay, I'm getting you in on this one. Someone, because neither you or I are Alaska Native, so let's just, I'm correct, right? So let's just, we'll take this one, fellas. Someone described the purchase of Alaska as follows: a sale by one European nation to another European nation of a land belonging to neither. What do you think of that?
Gosh, I don't know how to answer that. Yeah.
Well, I've heard a couple people say to me before that, Alaska was basically stolen by Russia and sold out of the back of a van, and nobody really consulted the Alaska Native people. And I think this is something that it's not like they're going to take the star off the flag. I don't think anybody's going to sell Alaska back to Russia so they can just turn it over to the Alaska Natives and say sorry about that. But even just that sort of attitude, I think the acknowledgement of that might go a long way with the Alaska Native community.
I don't think you'd find any Alaska Native that would disagree with that.
And I think, in essence, when we look at, the end of the Crimean War and how Russia was sold, quote unquote sold, Russia could not sell what Russia did not own. And it very clearly, Russia did not conquer the indigenous people. So in this point in history, we're already looking at how can you sell people when slavery is illegal? And with the Treaty of Westphalia, which is really the definition of sovereignty that's agreed on internationally, we look at a situation where it's very clear that Russia did not have the authority to sell people's land. And that, I think, is something that we need to look at ourselves, because it's a dark page in our history book. When you come in, and even something as simple as statehood, statehood, the vote really belonged to the indigenous people. And so when people are selling, there's a major conflict of interest there. And it's something that should be illuminated, and we should all be aware of it. I think that awareness will help build education for people to study this issue deeper.
Well, obviously, we've just scratched the surface with this. But I think that this discussion needs to go on with more people. It's not something that we sit down and spend very much time with. We don't say, we don't, white Americans, and I'll just speak for all of us, is that we don't like to talk about what happened to the Native Americans when the Europeans came in. We don't like to talk about what happened with slavery, and we don't like to talk about what happened in Alaska. And this isn't about guilt. This is about us all getting on the same page, and I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, and we don't talk about what institutional racism still exists in Alaska today. That's actually impoverishing rural Alaska.
Well, I think this is one step in, and hopefully we can get to that as well. And I won't keep complaining about Captain Cook getting eaten by the Hawaiian Indians, okay? I'm kidding. All right, so thanks so much for joining us. I'm Shannyn Moore. This has been More Up North.